and then go to that and that. Look. Okay, why don't you just get over there and just get me. Turn the light on, man. Oh, you need it? Here I am, Skippy Lowe. Welcome to Skippy Lowe Looks at Hollywood. Here I am on Canon in Beverly Hills. And this evening we are going to see Jackie Mason. And the fabulous Jackie Mason, who shines his new mint jokes with glitter. He is a fantastic entertainer. I'll be interviewing him in a few minutes. And first of all, I would like you to take a look at this wonderful little theater here at the Canon Theater in Beverly Hills. And Jackie is going to be here for several months. His show is doing so well, and we're very honored to have him here in Beverly Hills. Okay? We're going to the hotel right now to interview Jackie Mason. Thank you. Well, you know, when I was a little boy, I used to work at Sammy's Bowery Follies in New York, and for Sammy Futes. And guess what? I worked strip joints around Chicago. I worked Catskills as a comedian. And I worked with Shecky Green in Chicago. I'll never forget the time when I worked with Shecky. Shecky was with Sterling and Green. And I worked with some great comedians in my day. And it was fun working with these wonderful comedians. But one day, I turned the television on, and there it was, a comic on the Ed Sullivan Show. I couldn't believe it. Rabbi. I said, here it's a rabbi, Jackie Mason. Are you really were a rabbi?
I really was a rabbi, that's right. Why would you lie to people? Just because you lied before doesn't mean you can't be telling the truth now. Now you happen to be telling the truth. I was a rabbi. I come from a whole family of rabbis.
Really?
It's a tradition in my family to be nothing but rabbis for many, many generations. I'm the first one to actually give up the rabbinate in the whole history of my family tree.
Uh-huh.
And I gave it up because of this of a very important reason, cash. It's called cash. When I found out the difference between a rabbi's salary and a Jewish comedian, even when a Jewish comedian is not doing so hot, it's a fortune of money compared to a rabbi.
Uh-huh.
Rabbi makes $1.25 every month and a half. If I say hello, 40,000, 90,000, 140,000, and you're going to tell me it's better to live a life of sacrifice. I know that a rabbi does holy work, and I'm not making fun of it. It would be tasteless to make fun of the great meaning and feeling and the depth and the significance of what a rabbi accomplishes in teaching and preaching a better life to people. But cash, to me, is still tops.
The show you're doing right now. You started here in Beverly Hills at the Canon Theater.
Right.
You went to Broadway, became such a hit.
Right.
And now back to the Canon and doing such a big hit here.
Well, I'm doing it again because I'm preparing another Broadway show. I've been on Broadway 8 years now.
8 years.
What started as a one-man show that I thought would last an hour, and everybody told me I don't even belong there in the first place because they say, a Jewish accent, he's out of touch with this universe. Nobody understands him. He can't talk English. What right does he have to bother people? Go into a ghetto someplace in Borough Park in Brooklyn and talk to a few old Jewish people. Play a bar mitzvah or a kachalin in the mountains. What are you bothering people who could afford a Rolls Royce? It's not for you. And all of a sudden, an hour later, I became a huge hit. And it went to Broadway. And
the other show was called what?
The first one was called The World According to Me. Then I did a second one called Jackie Mason Brand New. Now I'm doing this third one called Politically Incorrect. That was on Broadway for a year and a half, and now it's started here.
Jackie, Broadway, Tony Awards. I mean, the Tony Awards upset me by not nominating you in that show. Why?
Right.
Tell me about that.
Because if you see...
Why? I'm upset because you're such a big hit on Broadway and they didn't include you.
Well, I find that the most offensive and disgusting thing in the world. Right. It's not that I'm an egomaniac, even though I might be. It's not that I'm a presumptuous, preposterous person, even though that's also true. But the point is that if a person is on Broadway and he's good enough to pack a building for 8 years, how could you claim it's not a show?
You're right.
It's like walking into a furniture store. There's 9 million chairs. This chair is not a chair, but people are sitting on it. It's a chair. It's like every plane is an airplane, but you pick out United Airlines. They're not airplanes. They're flying, but it's not a plane. It's a dance studio. It's a plane. How could you claim what I'm doing is not a show? But this is the bias of Broadway, the elitist bias. If I was a guy with a fancy toupee from France, dancing around with a pair of leggings somehow and doing pantomime, they'd call it a show. But if you're a Jew with a big mouth, it's not a show.
Well, Broadway's a little snobbish, Jackie.
That's exactly what I mean.
From the school of comedy.
Right.
You know, Broadway's not, they
Right, they have an
elitist.
elitist, right.
They do, why is
Right,
that?
they look at comics as people who really don't belong in show business.
Right.
Somehow the fact that people are laughing and packing the building doesn't count. The fact that you're a sensation for 8 years, this doesn't mean anything. The fact that they decided it's not a show, because they have this elitist attitude that you have to rehearse a musical for 9 years and get 2 steps right. And somehow those 2 steps become a show. But 19 hours of comedy is nothing. People, it's like saying that Judaism is a religion, but Christianity is not. Or a Hindu has a right to have a religion, but a Buddhist is not. It's an idiotic kind of a standard that they created in their own sick minds that comes from that elitist attitude that if you sound Jewish, you're not really in show business.
How do you feel being alone on Broadway, just Jackie Mason alone, and they're snobbing you there? I mean, it must hurt Jackie.
Well, it certainly does. I can't deny it. I resent it. I detest it. I'm furious, but they're lucky I haven't got a gun handy. I would hit them with a truck. I don't even have a truck. I'm dying to find some way to shoot these people in the heart. And every time I think of it, I don't know, hiring somebody costs a fortune today, and I'm busy. So they're still getting away with it. If I wasn't busy, they didn't have a minute left to live.
Jackie, you are doing great business here at the Canon Theater. You're going to be here how long more?
Till about October 1st or 2nd.
Really?
Yes.
And then you're going to take it back to New York.
Then I'm going to take out the
How
whole...
about Chicago? You're going to go on the road with it?
I'm going to go on the road to Chicago maybe for a week, 6 months from now. I play every city for a week or 2, but my main thrust is Broadway, and I'm developing a whole new show for Broadway because I want to make sure that not one word is the same as the last show. Just like this show, Politically Incorrect doesn't have one word from the last show. I've always...
Politically incorrect. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Politically incorrect. Does this mean...
I make fun of the idea that you're somehow not allowed to say whatever you want about any denomination.
Right.
That all of a sudden we live in a restricted society where we lost our freedom of speech, and everybody is fearful and tense and nervous about making any joke about anybody. And I make a whole mockery and a comedy out of the whole idea that somehow there's a censorship. There's a censorship in foreign countries that call it censorship. Here, because the government does it, because the government doesn't do it, it doesn't come from the government, it comes from people, it's not considered censorship. But it's the same type of censorship. You know, one white person who has the nerve to talk about black people, even if he wants to give them a compliment, he looks around for a week and a half before he says a word. Do you know that one person who's not afraid to tell a joke about a homosexual, as if somehow he's holy and you're not allowed to even tell a joke about him? People were once persecuted before. Because they were once persecuted, they resent everybody who once persecuted them. And the people who once are guilt-ridden today and embarrassed and ashamed of themselves. So between the embarrassment, the shame, the guilt, and the fear, everybody's walking around wondering, did I say something wrong? What did I do? People can't say hello without wondering if they made a mistake.
Absolutely.
And if you tell a meaningless joke, it's a headline the next day like you're the lowest bigot that ever lived. You could tell your own mother jokes. A mother might say about her own kid, I'll kill him if he crosses the street. But
There's a lot of truth there, Jackie. Truth on stage is the most wonderful thing. That is what Jackie Mason's really about. You use a lot of truth. Comedy is truth. Being honest.
I don't think you could be a good comedian or an effective comedian if there's no substance or significance to what you're saying. If you haven't got a point of view, if you're not saying something that's insightful, if you're not teaching somebody something about life, if you're not revealing something to them they didn't think of before, if you don't have anything penetrating or revealing, if you're not interpreting, so if you don't attack the hypocrisy, the fraud, the sham, the chicanery, everything that goes on in our society, the lies everybody tells themselves and each other, this whole life is so much fraud and chicanery that I think it's refreshing to hear somebody tell you how crooked you are right to your face.
I love it.
Right. How people buy a Mercedes and pretend they buy it for the engineering because they're involved in status symbols and they don't want to believe it. They walk around with the Gucci belts and tell you they're not impressed with it. They suffer all their life to make billions of dollars, or rob and steal and kill to make millions, and then they say money means nothing to me. Who cares about money? Then they want to show you their boat, and they say, I couldn't care less about boats. You think I'm interested in boats? Come here, let me show you my boat. it's disgusting to lie, but they all get married and defraud the person they're married to in almost all cases. They say you shouldn't cheat, and they're cheating all the time. They teach the kid never to say a dirty word while they're watching pornography day and night. Pornography is the biggest seller in America. All the legitimate pictures put together don't make as much money as the pornographic movies.
This is the country, though, not the Europeans so much, Jackie.
I really don't know. I really don't know. I haven't studied exactly the figures in Europe, but we're talking about America. Where are we sitting in Africa? We're sitting in America. Now we're wondering about, we're worried about.
Like the American government. I interviewed Eartha Kitt, and she calls the government of this country the biggest pimps in the world. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that's too broad a generality. There's plenty of fraud and chicanery from a guy like Clinton who can't tell the truth about anything. Even if he says hello, is some kind of a lie involved in it. Like, take a look at how many different stands he took up about a situation like Bosnia. People are getting killed every day. He said in his last campaign that it's the most horrific, most unbelievable massacre of human life. It's as inexcusable as the Holocaust. And then how could a guy like Bush allow this to happen? The tragedy of humanity. And he said it with such compassion. The day he got elected, he forgot that Bosnia ever existed. All of a sudden, he found out we can get involved in these things. People are getting killed, but that's not our business. Death is not the worst thing in the world, as long as it's not in the neighborhood. Just because I said it doesn't mean that you have to hold me to it. That's not my fault if people are listening every time I talk. This man is the biggest fraud that ever lived. Nothing that he says means anything to him.
Jackie, you should president. You should run for president. You know why? You have a lot of compassion there. You have a lot of. You speak with a lot of feeling. You feel and truthful and you're honest.
Right.
And I like what you're just saying. I really believe what you're saying about Clinton, especially.
Right.
You know,
right.
I'm a definite Republican. I mean,
I wouldn't care if I'm the biggest Democrat that ever lived.
Right.
A fraud is a fraud, but he was my own mother. If my own mother did this to the Bosnians that he did, I wouldn't stop to think, wait a second, who is she? What's the difference who it is? If your father wants to shoot somebody in the heart, would you say, oh, go ahead, it's my father? Would you say you would justify it anymore when human life is involved because you know the guy personally or you're from his party? People are so involved with parties that morality means nothing to them compared to their party. If their party could wipe out 3 million people a day, but it's more important to them to save their party than human life.
It's so nice seeing you sitting here and have so much compassion about the human race out there, human being. Jackie Mason grew up in New York. Let's go back. Grew up in Manhattan or Bronx or Brooklyn or where?
I grew up in Manhattan, on the Lower East Side of Manhattan.
I did too, at Cherry Street.
Right, I wasn't far from you, but I was in a much better neighborhood. I was on Henry Street.
Oh, I know Henry.
That was for a better class of people.
Cherry Street.
Yeah, we didn't even talk to the people on Cherry Street.
Anyway, Jackie.
Do you know that George Washington came from Cherry Street?
Oh, yes.
George Washington, the President of the United States.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if you knew him personally, but
no, I didn't.
He wasn't
I was
a
working
bad.
Sammy's Bowery Follies as a little kid. I used to work there. Jackie, going back to your life, did you enjoy as your child in that area of Manhattan, Lower East Side?
Oh, I had a wonderful childhood. I had nothing but love in the family.
Right.
I had nothing else but love. Children don't miss anything like material things. You only miss material things because you get involved in the contest with everybody who has more material things than you, and all of a sudden you discover how important it is. If you never had it and you're not involved in a contest with other people, you don't know you're missing anything. A kid only knows that he's missing love or attention, somebody who cares about his food, his shirt, his clothes, his time, his place. If he has a bed and he's comfortable and somebody nurtures and cares and loves, that's all the kid knows.
So when you were a rabbi, growing up, to become a rabbi, were you funny then as a rabbi?
I was very funny as a rabbi, otherwise I would have never thought of becoming a comedian.
Right.
The whole idea of becoming a comedian came to me from being a rabbi when I was a rabbi, and I did it only to please my father because I'm really not that religious. But I felt great reverence and respect for my father. I knew it would destroy him if he found one of his sons did not become a rabbi. To him, it was the holiest thing in the world. Not becoming a rabbi to my father was as low as becoming a Nazi.
Right.
If I told him tomorrow I joined the Ku Klux Klan, it's the same thing as saying I'm becoming a comedian, because it's a desecration of all the rituals of Orthodox Judaism. You can't observe all this while you're becoming a comedian. So to him, an observant Jew is the only person who had a right to live on the site. He accepted the idea that Gentiles have a right to live, but not too close to where Jews are.
Brothers and sisters?
Brothers and sisters, right. They have 3 brothers and 2 sisters. Right.
What do they do?
All my 3 brothers are rabbis, and my 2 sisters are married to rabbis.
Wonderful. So the family really is
Right.
very close. Very close.
Very close.
Very close, yeah.
Very close.
Looking back,
We all have one
what
thing in
has-
common.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
What
we're not
has
that crazy
been-
about you. What?
What has been the hardest for Jackie Mason? What has been the hardest, looking back in your life and your
Well,
career?
The hardest thing was the Ed Sullivan incident.
Tell me about that.
When they were
that
about
was the
20,
hardest for you.
that was about the hardest things. About 26, 7 years ago, when Ed Sullivan said I made a dirty gesture, which to me was the most disgusting thing, the most abominable thing that anybody could say about me, that I made a dirty gesture. To this day, 25 years later or 30 years later, I still don't tell a dirty joke. I still don't use any off-color words in my act. I think I'm the only comedian who never uses off-color material.
Right.
Even the middle-aged Jews and the old comedians are trying to imitate the young ones by starting every show with 4-letter words, even 7-letter words, and they make an issue and an education of trying to prove how vulgar is in, and in is hip, and hip is you, and you're supposed to be today's news if you come out with 50 filthy jokes before you say hello. And that became the trend to prove how clever they are.
Comedy stores, the improvs, those people they've made that trend. Those people who started those clubs, they're the responsibility of all that.
I can't blame anybody as
Well,
responsible.
I do.
How could you say they're responsible? They're doing it. That because they're doing it doesn't mean you have to do it.
Well, the club
He's
owners,
not
they
controlling.
own this club, Jackie. They allowed them to say those
It's the
four-letter
club
words.
owners that are more
They
responsible
are
than
the
them.
ones who allowed
Right.
those
It's the
four-letter
club
words.
owners.
That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
so,
I agree with
So
you.
the
I thought you
improv,
meant
the
the
comedy
comedians
store, they
themselves.
let them start it and they let it roll on.
100% right.
Am I right?
100%
Let's be honest
right.
with you, Jackie.
They-
You know, when we worked clubs, you and I, as kids, hey, we worked clean, risque, but clean.
But let's be honest about it. We're isolating them as the only culprits, but the truth of the matter is all movies have become filthy today. How often do you see a movie without 4-letter words? How often do you buy a book without filthy words on every page? Lenny Bruce, because he said a couple of off-color words, was ostracized and condemned and even imprisoned 20, 25 years ago. You say it, it's the most disgusting thing in the world. Look at the books. Every novel today is 4-letter filthy words. There's more filth and dirt in the novels of this country than in any comedian. That's why if I want to say something about sex, I don't say it. I write it down. I say, how about this?
So the Ed Sullivan incident really
Put a great kink in my career.
really hurt you. Really
Right.
hurt you.
It's not psychologically that
No,
it hurt me. It hurt me financially. It hurt me in terms of my image. It hurt me in terms of the truth. The truth is that I'm a clean person who doesn't do vulgarity, and he pinned a label on me of filth and dirt. People say when there's smoke, there's fire. That's the biggest lie on earth, because anybody in the world could make up any story about you. That doesn't make it true.
right, that's
That
right.
creates the smoke, but does that mean there's necessarily fire? Hitler claimed that every Jew is a murderer and has no right to live. Does that mean there's smoke, there's fire, because some degenerate liar or some weird pervert makes up a story? Does that mean that there has to be truth to it? You could create a vicious rumor about anybody and have a country believe
They
it.
did it when I was a little kid. The little girl next door said I played with her pee-pee. I didn't do anything like that. That's a true story.
It's a true
And
story.
Yes, as a
And they
little
condemned
child,
you for it.
and my father beat me up for it for no reason at all.
It goes to show you that your father was no bargain either.
That's right. You're right. He wasn't. But anyway, getting back, Jackie Mason, what has been the biggest lesson that you have learned?
Biggest lesson that I have learned is never work for these prices like I'm doing right now. Never work for these prices. This is the lesson I've learned a long time ago, and I keep forgetting the lesson. If I had my lessons in my pocket, I wouldn't be here today. But I forgot my lesson and I showed up again. And what I would say, there's no such thing as any one lesson you learn. From life and from experience, you learn a lot of things that you become more aware of that you didn't know before. What they are, to make a list of them is a very difficult thing to say. You learn a lot about life. You learn, for instance, not to trust people just because they said a kind word. I got wiped out financially a dozen times because I trusted people. Because I come from a kind of training and a background that was very moralistic and very Puritan, and every standard was wholly about human decency and human behavior. And I wasn't ready for the crookedness of what goes on in show business or among businessmen, where for $1 they'll defraud you, for just to get ahead they'll kill you. In a society like ours, where money is everything, it's so overvalued as the main thing in life. Let's be honest about it. Money creates a form of insanity in people, and it frees them to commit any kind of disgusting criminal acts in the name of the dollar. Take a look at a family that loves each other for or 100 years, and the father or mother is about to pass away. Do you ever see the hate that suddenly comes about who's going to get which chair, which table, who's going to get which piece of furniture, which pair of old shoes, which lamp? All of a sudden they hate each other for $1.25. These same people who loved each other all their lives. Look at anybody in any field. Take a look at a guy who's 73 or 97 still saving $14 million or $350 million and still begrudges the idea of giving a 10% tip to a waiter because it's killing him to part for 30 cents. Imagine if a guy had 50 million tables. Would he still be saving tables? Would he sacrifice his life for another table? If you asked him, well, excuse me, could I use this table? Would he call 300 lawyers to make sure that he gets the table back in an hour? But that's the way it is with cash, with money.
You're sitting there telling me you've been ripped off by a lot of these
right.
lawyers and businessmen.
Plenty of times.
Plenty of times. Who's this lovely lady you're sitting with?
This young lovely lady is one of those phenomenal human beings in the world, and the reason I say it is because I know absolutely nothing about her.
She's just blonde and beautiful,
All
right?
I know is I see blonde hair with a beautiful pair of legs,
Yeah.
and I thought I was an intellectual, decent person, and now I'm worried if I'm becoming a sex maniac because I'm trying to control myself. 3 times I started a sentence, I forgot what it was about now. I forgot what I do for a living.
Yeah.
This lady is a lovely lady.
She is. What is your name, girl?
Sandy.
Sandy, where are you from?
I'm from Los Angeles. Yes.
You've been seeing Jackie's show, have you?
Oh, I love it. It's fabulous. It's the best show I've ever seen.
What do you like about Jackie Mason? Tell me.
I love everything about him, especially his truthfulness, the way he looks at life.
Right.
The way he looks at life is absolutely fabulous.
Where are you from originally?
I'm from Minnesota.
Minnesota.
Yes.
See, there's another honesty there. There are people in Minnesota, it's Midwest. It's very nice. They love honesty. They love this truthfulness.
We don't go a little south because all of a sudden it's Arkansas. All of a sudden it's Arkansas, and we're back to the biggest liar in America.
Jackie Mason, it's just...
But this lady I really discovered when she came backstage with her mother a few days ago, and I knew right away she must be a brilliant person because she bought 4 of my tapes and 2 of my books, and I see she came in like she needed a truck to bring in everything she bought in the building that from everything I wrote or ever did, and I said to myself, oh, this is not only great legs, but she must have a great mind because she's smart enough to know that I'm a hit.
Canon.
She's even willing to spend money on it. I know if I have friends for 30 years, they come to see my show, they go home. Here's a person I don't know from Minnesota.
She bought many of your...
And she bought everything I own.
Tell me...
Sorry, I didn't sell a couch that day.
You're selling tapes after the show, is it?
Right.
Jackie, how, the audiences at the Canon, tell me about the audience, between the difference of the audiences in Los Angeles and New York. I know it's...
Well, it's a strange, interesting thing that in New York, the audiences have been almost consistently Gentile lately. I opened to a condominium crowd, and you thought that everybody was from Miami Beach, and there was nobody in the world under 73. God bless them, but they were all an elderly crowd of Jewish people who came from, I was wondering, what time is this a condominium or a theater? I couldn't believe it. I really thought I left and didn't even know that I was in Miami Beach. I must have got on the wrong plane. Then I got the Tony Awards and the Emmy Awards and all the other awards, and Gentiles started to discover me. Then young Gentiles started to discover me. And before you know it, there was no room for the Jews. Now I see elderly Jews in New York begging me, how could I get in there? I can't get on the line because there's 300 Gentiles in front of me. They're all 27. I can't fight with them. What am I going to do? How could I see the show? It became a Gentile audience. Here, however, it mostly seems to be a Jewish audience because I think it takes the Gentiles an extra month to find out about it.
Jackie Mason, a book?
Well, I wrote 3 books already.
You did? Oh,
one
yes,
is an
sure.
autobiography. One is a book called How to Talk Jewish, which ironically only the Gentiles are buying.
In the soup? The soup thing. Was there something about
No,
the soup?
nothing about soup.
Oh, that's Shelley Berman about the soup. Forget it. You get confused.
Shelley Berman, by the way, is a wonderful
Isn't he
comedian.
a wonderful...
A brilliant
And a wonderful actor.
fantastic actor. He wrote a play that I saw off Broadway about a year and a half ago that I thought is
I saw it.
brilliant play. And it hurt me to see that this play never reached
I
Broadway.
agree. I saw it.
I think it's a much better play than 90% of the hits on Broadway.
Tell me about Jackie Mason. Comedy, truthfulness, honesty, pathos, laughter, actor. They have, to be a dramatic actor, a good one like Red Buttons, I mean. Red Buttons is good. He's a good... But Jackie Mason, serious actor. I bet you can just go out there and do it.
Oh, I know. I don't think it's a trick for any comedian to be a serious actor because it takes 1/10 the talent to be a serious actor than it does to be a comedian. The comedians become serious actors in 5 seconds without any effort. Every time you see a serious actor try to do comedy, it becomes ridiculous. Nothing sounds legitimate. It sounds like he's making a fool out of himself in front of the whole world because the timing is off, the delivery is off. It's a whole art form that they can't even connect with in most cases. I know it's conceivable that it's possible, but when almost every time they try it, it goes right into the shithouse.
Right.
I shouldn't say shithouse. It's not nice on television. But on your show, it sounds appropriate.
Oh, it does.
I wasn't characterizing the show, I was characterizing the comedians. But it's a very, very delicate art form, comedy. Sensing and timing and delivery in terms of a joke and how to make it sound funny is a whole art form, which is far more delicate and much more scientific. It takes a much more innate, special, unique sense of timing and delivery than is involved in acting. Acting is a much easier. You can see people who are practically retarded who are very good actors.
I've always said that comedians are they can do dramatic roles. You can go right into it, always the best. Red Skelton, all of them, they're just Jackie Mason, growing up, who's your comic? Who's your favorite comedian?
I never had a favorite comedian. I had a favorite rabbi. I had a favorite prime minister. I was involved in politics. I was interested in religion. I was studying theology, and I was studying the Roosevelt administration, and I was wondering what's wrong with the WPA. But I don't remember thinking too much about comedy, and comedy didn't particularly enter my mind as a profession. But then when I was studying to be a rabbi, and after I became a rabbi, I needed to find another way to make a living without getting up too early in the morning. I think most of the people in show business are really in it because they don't want to get up in the morning, but they convince themselves that it's the talent that's driving them. What's really driving them is some way to make a living without working too hard. This way, you know, if you're a plumber and you don't have a job, you're considered unemployed. If you're an actor without a job, you're considered a professional. Right. You see, you're an artist. An artist who's not working is still an artist. A typist who's not working is a bum. How come you're not working? Nobody looks as an artist as a man who should be working because he's supposed to meditate, contemplate. If you're a sculptor, a poet, a writer, a philosopher without a job, you're still an intellectual. And people look at you as a genius.
Jackie Mason, how does Jackie Mason relax after a show? Or
I relax by taking these type of shows where you work for nothing. I relax by helping other people make a living who don't want to work for a living either, guys like you. And every time a person sees me who says, why don't you do my show? I don't know what kind of a show it is. I don't know if anybody sees the show. All I know that your show happens to be a big hit because even in New York I hear a lot about Skippy Lowe. And you are doing remarkably well, and people can't believe it because nobody knows what your talent is. What field you're in.
No, I started to Sammy's Bowery.
Let's be honest about it. This is the era when the people who can do nothing are the ones who own all the shows. There used to be a time that the star of the show was the comedian or the singer. Right. Now the star of the show is the guy that can't do nothing. He introduces you to the guy who performs. He himself doesn't do nothing. He shows you this guy performs now, the other guy performs later, and all these performers with all that brilliant talent are getting $1.25. The guy who points to them is making a fortune.
Jackie Mason, how about a TV series, a series, our own show?
Well, I would love to do my own show. I'm talking to people now about alternative possibilities for my own show. But I would never do a sitcom again. The sitcom to me is a prison camp.
I don't like sitcoms. Never did like them. It's something about sitcoms. Shelley Winters, every time I go to Shelley Winters' house, she's at those sitcoms. She loves them. Why?
I find them boring to watch, boring to do. It's a tedious, terrible, draining process. To get up in the morning, 6 o'clock, and say the same three lines 4,000 times in front of the director who's usually a Nazi once who was there just to persecute Jewish people. It's a horrible way to make a living. Somebody said to you, you want a job with a future? What's the future? The future is you'll stand in the corner and say the same thing 3,000 times a day.
Right.
Would you know anybody who would apply for that job? They would say, what are you, insane? On the what do you call that? On the lines where you make the cars, what do you call those lines?
On the, oh yes, I know what you mean.
There's a title for those people who work on the cars. The assembly lines. On the assembly lines, they studied for dozens of years how to make an assembly line more interesting by chasing them around to different assembly lines where they'll put together different things so that it'll change the pace. They'll change the drives, involve themselves in different activities so that there should be some variety, so it shouldn't be the same draining thing of doing the same thing 1,000 times. They're smart enough to do it in industry and time and motion studies, but they're too stupid to do it in a movie. In a movie, you're still saying the same thing 50,000 times. Gregory Peck has a much worse life than a guy on an assembly line in Minnesota.
What's your philosophy in life, Jackie Mason?
My philosophy of life is enjoy life to the best of your ability while trying to do the best you can for other people too.
Is Jackie Mason doing it?
People who are not as blessed as you are, and if you have anything, have the decency to help others. Take out a moment of your time to talk to an elderly lady who doesn't have anybody for a conversation. Take out a sandwich to give it to a guy who's not eating. Take out the time to walk over to somebody who hasn't got a place for a playground, for a dance hall, for somebody who doesn't have a place to go that night, or somebody to talk to. You know, people will give you money, but they'll never give you their time. A person who has nobody to talk to is more desperate than a person who has nothing to eat. And people never seem to care about the person who has nobody to talk to. There's so many people who don't have a friend or a family and are living alone because today with the disintegration of the American family where children give themselves excuses for never seeing their parents, there's thousands of parents sitting around in homes waiting for a child to show up. The child moved across the street and from across the street it's already too far for him to get to his own mother.
Jackie Mason, you have a lot of friends out there. You have time to say hello to everyone.
God bless you.
I really want to thank you for coming today.
Thank you. Thank you. The price was right. That's the main thing. I'm still waiting for my first check from these shows.
Thank you, Jack.
A few dollars would help.
Good night, John.
God bless you. Take care of yourself.
Lots of luck in the show.
Thank you very much.